welcome to Diecast 64's Hot Wheels Race Science, the show where we answer your questions and see if we can get your cars faster. So today, we've got a question from John, and he writes, there are a lot of different brands of graphite out there at a lot of different price points. Are the more expensive ones really better than the cheaper ones? Hey! Well, John, I'm glad you asked that because we have an experiment all ready to test out graphite. So we're going to try to answer your question. What we did is we went over to Walmart and we got this Hillman brand graphite for just a little under $2, I think. And we're going to test that guy out. We went and we found a very common graphite in the Pinewood Derby industry. This is Hobby Lube, and it was around the $4 to $5 price range, and so we're going to test that guy out. And then we got ourselves some premium graphite. This was in the like $10 to $12 range. It's called Accelerate, and we're going to test that guy out too. So we're going to test out those three graphites at several different price points, right? Cheap, middle of the road maybe, and then a more premium expensive one. And we're going to see if it makes a difference, if one graphite actually works a little bit better than the other. But before we do that, let's just talk about why does graphite work? Because we know it does, right? Graphite is definitely going to make your cars faster. That's undisputed. Now the real question again that we're trying to ask is, are certain graphites better than others, right? Are some graphites going to make your cars even faster? And that's what we really want to explore. And so to figure that out, to really understand that, we need to understand why cars aren't very fast and why graphite helps. And so really, that all comes down to friction. Ugh, friction. We hate it and love it at the same time. Because if we didn't have it, if we didn't have friction, I couldn't stand up, right? Friction is what keeps us having traction on the ground. It's great, but you know what? When it comes to cars, not so great. Well, sometimes, actually, in a real car, friction is great because it gives us traction with the wheels. Otherwise, we just sit there and spin and spin and spin when we step on the gas. We won't go anywhere, right? So we like friction. However, when it comes to like wheels and axles and moving parts, sometimes friction is definitely not our friend, right? And when it comes to racing Hot Wheels cars, friction causes our cars to not be as fast sometimes. And here's why, right? So when two surfaces rub on each other, sometimes if they're really smooth, then they rub past each other really easily. And if they're not as smooth, then they don't rub past each other as smooth. And that resistive force that keeps things from rubbing past each other easily and smoothly, that's friction. Friction is just a resistive force that acts against the motion of two objects rubbing past each other. Friction is everywhere though. It doesn't matter how smooth the surface is. If you zoom in far enough, it's going to be rough, right? If you zoom in far enough, no matter how smooth the surface looks, it's really going to be something like this. And so you can see if I tried to put those two surfaces together and push them past each other, these little hills and valleys are going to get all stuck in each other and it's going to resist that motion, right? And so friction again is that resistive force that keeps objects from wanting to slide easily past each other. And everything has friction because again, no matter how smooth the surface looks, if you zoom in far enough, it's gonna get rough. It's going to look rough, right? And so what we try to do is we try to maybe sand the surfaces and knock down some of these hills and valleys so that they're not quite as high. But at some point, we can only go so far, right? And so we're gonna have friction. Friction is always there. And so what graphite helps us do is it helps us maybe overcome this friction, right? And so it's good in some cases to have some friction, but when it comes to a Hot Wheels car, the place where we really don't like a lot of friction is between the wheels and the axles. and then another place where the axle or where the wheel rubs on the chassis. We don't like it there. There's a couple places in the wheel that rub on the axles. There's the inside, the wheel bore, and then also the hub where the end of the axle is going to rub on the inside hub of the wheel. So we got lots of places where we've got friction. So we don't like friction, so enter graphite. So graphite. So here's my crude drawing of the structure of graphite. Let me explain why graphite is helpful when it comes to overcoming friction. So graphite is basically just carbon. It's a bunch of carbon atoms bonded together, and they bond together in these rings, right? These hexagonal rings, 6 carbons. And you can have big sheets of these rings, right? Big flat sheets of these rings. And then we have lots of sheets, and there are some very weak bonds holding the sheets together. And so what happens then is these bonds, these red bonds here that are kind of holding the sheets together are really weak. And so they break super easily. And so there's this shearing force when these two things try to rub across each other, and there's graphite in between them now. Instead of these things bumping across each other, it's just these two graphite sheets that slide across each other. And the shearing force that it takes to get these to slide past each other is quite a bit smaller than it would be to get these to bump across each other. That's basically how graphite works. Graphite, the structure is in these very thin sheets, and there are very weak bonds holding those sheets together, and they break very easily, and so these graphite sheets slide past one another really easily. And so that's how it helps overcome friction. And so basically, again, graphite is just carbon. And so when we look at different brands of graphite, we probably shouldn't see much of a difference. It's carbon, right? It's carbon sheets. If it's graphite, it's graphite. However, there could be some other things that may cause one brand of graphite to be a little bit better than maybe another one. Did you know pencils have graphite in them? That's how we write. When we write with a pencil, remember those layers of graphite that slide across one another? Well, layers are just sliding right off of the end of your pencil when you write. And what you've left behind is just graphite on the paper. Isn't that cool? But guess what? Pencils aren't pure graphite. They're actually mixed with clay. And the amount of graphite versus the amount of clay in them means that we get a harder or a softer pencil, which makes different kinds of marks on the paper. But the idea again is that it's not pure graphite. And that is what I'm thinking that might be the case with some of the different brands of graphite. If a certain brand of graphite is like 100% pure graphite, then that's all we've got in there. I feel like that might be a little bit better than maybe some other brands of graphite that maybe aren't quite as pure, right? There might be some other things in there besides just those pure carbon structures. So that could be one reason why maybe some graphites are better than others. So we got our 3 graphites here. We got the cheaper version, the Hillman graphite, and actually this is marketed as like a graphite for locks. And then we've got our Hobby Lube. This is marketed to Pinewood Derby type buyers that would be looking to make wheels and axles spin faster. So it's kind of a typical graphite for that. And then we have the Accelerate, which is an ultra graphite. It's marketed for racers and hobbyists, and supposed to be like a premium graphite. But I've sprinkled a little bit on this paper here, and what I'd like to do is take you in really close and look at the difference, because they're actually all 3 a little bit different when you even zoom in and look at them. So let's take a close look and see what these look like. So here's the Hillman graphite, and as we zoom in and get really close here, you can see that it's actually kind of bigger flakes. So that's kind of interesting. This graphite is the hobby lube. You can see it's definitely smaller than the flakes of the cheaper Hillman stuff, but still, I mean, you can see a little bit of, you can kind of see some flakes in there, right? So this is the Accelerate graphite, and you can see that it's pretty small when it comes to like the flakes. I would even call this, you know, a powder, right? And so as we look at the three different kinds of graphite here, it appears that their size, the size of the flakes, is definitely different. So I don't know if that's going to make a difference when we get it on the car, but it could. Like the difference in these graphites I could see is maybe some of them, especially the powder, the more powdery one, being able to get into places a little bit better and maybe being a little more effective. But who knows? This is going to be exciting. This is going to be exciting to see what this looks like. I kind of want to take a look at this graphite and maybe just rub it around a little bit. So you can see as I spread that one around, and even on my finger, right, kind of is this nice powdery that just really gets into everywhere. Let's try this one, rub this one around a little bit. And you can see compared to the two, it doesn't quite, shall we say, stain the paper as much, but definitely spreads around a little bit. Let's see, on my finger, definitely a little more sparkly than the other graphite, but still kind of getting all over my finger. Let's go over here, this Hillman stuff. As I spread that around, it doesn't really, shall we say, stain the paper very well, right? Compared to these other ones that can really like rub into the paper and cause some discoloration. When you look at my finger here, again, you're seeing definitely some sparkles there, looking a little bit different. You can still see like the larger flakes on my finger, where it seems like this one you can still see some individual flakes. This one it appears there's a few bigger sparkly flakes there, but a lot of it is just kind of ground into my finger. So I guess again, if I was looking at these three graphites, I might say that the more expensive one, the more powdery like one, maybe could get into lots of little nooks and crannies and little places where maybe the bigger flakes of the cheaper graphite might not, but I don't know. Anyways, this is going to be fun. I guess what we really need to do is just run an experiment. All right, guys, it's experiment time. Oh, yeah. Get to actually do some racing and run some cars. So here's the plan. So we've got our three different graphites, right? And we've got 12 cars. And I don't know if you remember, but in our break-in experiment, we found that it does help to break in the cars. It's gonna do one of three things. A lot of the cars, it didn't really matter too much. There were some cars that actually got a little slower after we broke them in, and there were some cars that got a little faster after we broke them in. So we decided that it's a good idea to break in your cars, because you never know what might happen, but you want to break them in, and then you can make a good judgment about your cars. So what we've done is I've actually run these cars down the track a whole bunch of times, and have broken them in, right? And actually I ran a whole bunch of cars down the track, and what I tried to do was I tried to find cars that were pretty close to the same speed. Now, they're not exactly the same speed. I ran through a lot of cars, right? And they are all over the place, but I got a group of cars that were pretty close, hopefully within like a car length of each other at least. Some of them were running really close. And so those are the cars that I'm going to use. I got 12 of them. And so what I'm going to do is separate them into like 4 groups. And so 4 cars are going to get the cheap Hillman stuff. 4 cars are going to get the hobby lube. And 4 cars are going to get the Accelerate. And then we're going to see who shows the most improvement, right? Because we know that they're all going to run faster with graphite. Well, I'm pretty sure, right? Just from personal experience, the graphite definitely helps. So I think the way that the experiment is going to go, now that I've broken all the cars, they've had lots of runs, I'm going to run them down the track and several times and get kind of a pre-graphite average time on them, right? Then I'll apply the graphite, kind of use the same method for all of them. When applying the graphite, we get the graphite in there and we'll rerun the cars down the track several times, get an average time. We're assuming that the post-graphite runs will be faster than the pre-graphite runs. And what we're going to do is compare those. And we're going to look for how much faster are they with graphite. And I think what we'll do is we'll do like a percentage. So these cars ran 3% faster with graphite, or 9% faster with the graphite, or whatever. And hopefully we'll see that either that percentage of increase, decrease in time, increase in speed, right? But that percent change will be either the same for all the graphites or will be different. And we'll look at that percent change. Obviously, we want the highest percent change, and that would be the best graphite. And if the price says anything to do with it, then we would assume that this would help the cars increase their speed the most, the greatest percent change, and this one would be the least, right? But that's why we're running the experiment, to find out. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go get all of these cars on the track, and we'll get some initial speeds, initial times on them. And then we'll hit them with the graphite and get some new times on them. And we'll see if it changes. So let's get over to the track. All right, it's time to get this show on the road. We are going to do an experiment. So we're going to run these cars down the track. Give them 5 runs and get some average times on them. Then we're going to put the graphite on and do it all again and see what kind of improvement we get. So, you ready to run? All right, let's do this. Alright, so we've got all the cars run without graphite. 5 trials. We've got the data recorded. We're gonna average those times, see how that comes out. So now it's time to go put the graphite on all these, and then we'll run them again. Alright, graphite has been applied, and it is time to get these guys back on the track. Wow, so excited to see what the results are here. So we're going to run these guys again, and we'll see what kind of improvement the graphite's done. Alright, so we got them all run with graphite now. Got the data all down. So now we just got to go crunch some numbers, do some math. Woo, math, yeah. So we'll go do some math, we'll get some averages, and we're going to see if either any of these graphites are better than the other. Woo, so exciting. Okay, let's go do some math. Alright, so that was fun. Got to run the experiment. Now it's time to crunch some numbers, look at the data, and come up with a conclusion. So if you remember, we tested 3 kinds of graphite, and we had the as far as price point goes, we had the low-end, cheaper brand graphite, the Hillman graphite. Kind of our midline graphite, again, as far as price point goes, was the Hobby Lube. And then we had our most expensive graphite was the Accelerate. And so what we did, we tested 4 cars initially. I ran those 4 cars down the track, and we got time on them before Graphite. Then I put the Graphite on, applied the Graphite, and ran them again, and looked for some improvement in time. And there was. That was to be expected with the Graphite. It did vary a little bit, which was kind of interesting. But I thought what we'd look at then is the percent change, or how much the speed increased for each one. As I got the numbers and started putting them into the computer and taking a look at them a little bit more, I kind of felt like there was a little bit of, well, actually a lot of variation, even between each individual graphite. So I didn't really feel like I had enough data to really be conclusive. And so what I actually did was I got 4 more cars for each different kind of graphite, and did the same experiment. So in all, I tested 8 cars with each type of graphite. And then I started to put those numbers in. And as I did that, I felt like, yeah, there's still some variation, but we're starting to see some definite patterns emerge. I can feel a little bit more confident about our conclusion. So got a little more data, and I think it turned out pretty good. So what we did, again, we're looking for the percent change, or how much faster, what percentage faster did the car run? Did it run 3% faster, 5% faster, 2% faster, whatever. So that's what we were looking at. And just to give you kind of a baseline to compare a little bit with, I decided to go, I looked up some of the times from Diecast 64's open modified race in July. July was kind of a little bit before we started to see some of those bearing cars, and added a little more variation. So it was a pretty typical race, the July Open Modified. And what we found was that between the 10th place car, so I looked at the top 10 cars, and between 10th place and first place, there was about a 1.4% change. Right, so 1.4, the fastest car, July Open Modified, ran 1.4% faster than the 10th place car. So that gives you kind of a baseline. Start to throw some numbers up here so that you can kind of see the difference a little bit, right? So, all right, well, hey, let's get into this, right? Let's see some numbers. So it turns out that the Hillman brand, the cars on average were 1.2% faster with the graphite. So there was on average a 1.2% improvement in time. Kind of another interesting number that I looked at was the car that improved the most with the Hillman graphite actually improved by 2.4%. So you can kind of see the potential there on average, and kind of the potential change. So not bad with the Hillman. Hobby Lube, kind of our midline price point graphite. This one showed, let's see, check my numbers here. We got a 1.9% increase in speed on average. And the top performing car, or the top improving car, ran a 3.6% faster than before graphite. So pretty good improvement there. And finally, for our Accelerate, the most expensive graphite that we tested, it had a 1.4% average change. The cars ran 1.4% faster with the graphite. And then the top improving car improved by 2.9%. So yeah, you kind of see the difference there a little bit. And I don't know, I think I feel comfortable saying that yeah, I think there is a difference when it comes to graphite. However, the most expensive graphite may not be your best, right? So in our experiment, with the data that we have, it looked like the Hobby Lube was the best performing graphite. But definitely I think there's enough difference, both in average and in potential, that we can say that, yeah, there's a difference in the types of graphite that we use. But I don't know. There was as I was looking at the numbers, there is definitely some variation. I think maybe some other things happening. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to dive into those numbers a little bit more, bring you with me on that little journey. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna bring you in close. We're gonna take a look at some of the numbers. I'm gonna show you a couple of the other things that I kind of looked at, and then we'll make a real good conclusion and let you know what the deal is when it comes to graphite. Alright, so let's delve into the numbers a little bit here. This is the spreadsheet that I put our data on initially. And now I'm not going to spend tons of time talking about kind of individual numbers here, but I am going to get into it just a little bit. So here you can see our before graphite average times and our after graphite average times, and then our percent change. Right, and that's really what we were looking for. And then we already kind of talked about these. We've got our averages here, and you can see that the top one, this is the Hillman brand, the cheaper brand. And then we've got our middle of the row brand here, the Hobby Lube. And again, it's tended to show the best improvement. And then we've got our most expensive brand down here, the Accelerate. And again, it showed some improvement over the cheap brand. But again, the Hobby Lube seemed to stand out. One thing that I think is really interesting here is, let's just look at some numbers here. Look at all the percent changes here for really any of them. Let's just look really quick. So with the Hillman brand, we had almost 2.5% change in speed, right? A 2.5% improvement with the fastest. But we also have some that showed very little improvement, right? So we've got some 0.5s and some 0.2%. Really, that's not much improvement at all. So again, the results were really varied. Same thing with all of them. We've got our Hobby Lube brand, little over 3.5% increase in speed. But some of the cars, like this guy right here, showed very little, actually no improvement, right? And again, the same with our expensive brand, Accelerate, 2.88% improvement, almost 3% improvement. But we had some cars that showed really negligible improvement, right? 0.04, 0.03, that's basically no improvement. And so again, the results are really varied. And so I think, I definitely think that there's a difference in graphite, and so you need to test those and try to come up with what you think is the best graphite, because I definitely think there's a difference. However, kind of another thing that I feel like I'm learning here is that graphite, when it comes to speed, graphite's going to help, and you need to not discount it, but it is not the biggest predictor of speed, I don't think. I think there's some underlying factors like wheels and axles and who knows, maybe some other things that are really probably way heavier when it comes to speed than the graphite itself. So it's a complete package kind of thing, I guess. You can't just throw some graphite on a car and expect it's going to be a contender. You can't even throw the best graphite on a car and expect it's going to be a contender. There's some other factors, and you got to do a lot of other testing and make sure that you've got a fast car, and then graphite's gonna improve that. Anyways, there you go. I'm gonna move on from this page. If you want to dig into those numbers a little bit more, you can go ahead and pause the video and do that. But a lot of you guys race at Diecast 64, and at Diecast 64 we rarely talk about speed in terms of time. We actually usually talk about it in scale speed, right? So at Diecast 64 we report times, but we also report a scale speed, and sometimes that's a little more I don't know, it just makes a little more sense to us, a little funner to talk about. And so that's what I did. I went ahead and took our same data and I converted it to scale miles per hour. And so here's our miles per hour before graphite, and after graphite, but the real one that is fun to look at here is the change, right? So instead of reporting a % increase in speed, we're going to report a miles per hour increase or change in speed. And again, sometimes that makes a little more sense, especially if you've been racing. You kind of know, if I can get 410 or 415 or whatever it is, you kind of have a feel for how many miles per hour you need to improve to be a contender. So let's take a look here. So I do have these sorted from greatest to least, and so with our Hillman brand up here on top, our biggest change in miles per hour was 9.5 miles per hour change, and on down to, again, very little. With the Hobby Lube brand, our best improvement was 14 miles per hour improvement there. Again, all the way down to basically negligible. And then with the Accelerate brand, we had an 11.5 mile per hour improvement, all the way down to, again, 0.1, basically negligible. When we look at the averages, instead of reporting them in %, here's what that would be looking like as far as miles per hour, how much faster in miles per hour your car would be. We'd have a 7.7 miles per hour improvement with the best brand that we tested, the Hobby Lube, 5.4 of course for the Accelerate, and 4.7 for the Hillman brand. So anyways, thought that was kind of interesting. Good stuff. All right, so this screen is just a little bit different than the previous screen. So in some of the other shots, we've talked about how several of the cars didn't show really any improvement at all. So I feel like there's really something going on there, kind of a little bit of an anomaly, probably some wheel or axle issues, and Graphite made no improvement. So those are probably not going to be the typical cars you're going to be trying to race, and you're probably going to notice that, hey, these are a little bit slower. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to drop those. So those ones that showed basically no change, I wanted to throw those out and then kind of recalculate the numbers. And so here are kind of some recalculations. I got rid of those ones. I mean, we still have some that showed little improvement here, but not those like 0.03%, right? We got rid of those. And so here's, you can see it did improve the averages a little bit. It didn't change who, the order, I guess, as to which Graphite looked like it was better. Still got the Hobby Lube on top, and the Accelerate, and the Hillman brand. So, but anyways, there's that for you if you want to look at that for a minute. I guess the last one that I kind of want to look at here. So what I did here was I took all the data, and even if you can't see the numbers very well, it doesn't really matter there. But what I did was I took all the data and sorted it according to the % change, right, from best to worst, and then I kind of color-coded the different graphites, right? So the yellow is our cheaper brand, the Hillman brand. The red is the middle-of-the-line brand, the Hobby Lube, and then the green is the Accelerate. So you kind of sort that out. So you can see kind of up here at the top, the most improvement is up here at the top, and you can see we're pretty red heavy, which is cool. Like I say, it turns out that the red, the Hobby Lube, was the best. We got some green up here as well, kind of mixing it up in here. A little bit of yellow sneaking in. We did have one car really show some improvement with the cheaper brand, and then again, kind of on down, you can see that the cheaper brand is a little more heavy down here with the yellow towards the bottom. But again, kind of the interesting thing is you see even all the brands, had some cars that just really didn't perform that well, or didn't improve that much with the Graphite. And so again, while we did see some trends, where some of the Graphites are trending a little bit better, we're still getting cars that they're not improving that much. So again, coming back to that idea that while I think Graphite, there is a difference, and we need to make sure that we are not discounting, different kinds of Graphite, we also can't just expect that's going to be it for our improvement. We have to do a lot of testing when it comes to wheels and axles and weight placement and probably a lot of other things. when we want to get a super fast car. We need the complete package, I guess. So don't discount all the other things that I'm kind of feeling like might even weigh a little bit more heavy as far as getting those top speed cars than just graphite, for sure. But anyways, hopefully that was kind of cool. Get to see some of those numbers there and dig into those a little bit. Like I say, I kind of feel like, again, for those that have raced a D64, kind of know miles per hour type stuff, this screen is really the one that tells the tale, right? Man, if you could get a 14.3 mile per hour improvement from your graphite, that's intense, right? So that's a game changer. But you know what? Even if you get a 4 mile per hour improvement, when it comes to those top cars, the D64, 4 mile per hour, I mean the difference between top 10 and winning, right? So definitely some difference makers there. So anyways, I hope you have fun kind of digging into those numbers with me. And like I say, I think we found that there is definitely a difference in the type of graphite you use. All right, well, hopefully you got a little bit more insight there as we looked at the data a little bit closer. But like I say, I think our data was conclusive enough. I feel pretty confident in saying that, yes, definitely there is a difference in graphites. I mean, we weren't really trying to show which graphite was the best, right? What we were trying to look at is, are all graphites the same? Or is there a difference, and should I be looking at different graphites and be concerned about that? And like I say, I really think that that our data shows that yes, there is a difference in graphite. So yeah, you should be testing some different kinds. You should be trying some different kinds and seeing which one you feel like is the fastest. Like I say, we didn't test necessarily which graphite's the fastest. We could do that sometime, maybe. There's a lot more graphites out there, so I mean, we could probably round up, I don't know, anywhere from 8 to 10 probably pretty commonly used types of graphite or brands of graphite. So man, if we're running at least 8 cars for each of one of those, that's a ton of cars. Like, I don't know, maybe I have to round up a lot of cars. Maybe you guys could send in some cars and we could get a good collection of cars, send in your favorite graphite, and then we could test them or something. I don't know, but that'd be a lot of fun. But right now, you're kind of on your own as far as like finding the fastest graphite, but definitely there's a difference. So get out there and test those graphites and see what you can come up with. The other thing, I think, kind of that underlying thing that we found was that while some cars really improved a lot with graphite, others didn't. And so there's a lot of other things that go into fast cars, right? Besides just throwing some graphite on and racing it down the track. Probably wheels and axles, they play a big role, right? You can't underestimate that. And so again, just because you throw some graphite on doesn't really mean it's going to be faster. But if your car has potential to get faster, then you got to choose the right graphite. Anyways, this was a lot of fun. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you'll get to doing a few experiments and trying out some stuff and finding your graphite that's going to work for you. We've got lots of experiments lined up. I'm super excited about some of the things we have coming up. If you've got something that you want us to test, then go ahead and put that in the comments below. We'll take a look at it and see what we can come up with. But anyways, I guess that's it. Thanks for tuning in to this edition, testing out graphites, and we'll see you next time on Hot Wheels Race Science.